Okay, calm down.
You are obviously the son of Holocaust survivors. Your parents actually were in numerous camps. Speaking of the Holocaust, I wanted to show you this, Norman. This image of Israel's envoy to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, slammed the Security Council on Monday for failing to condemn Hamas for its ruthless October 7th attack and reiterated Israel's position that, quote, those who call for an immediate ceasefire are ultimately asking to tie Israel's hands and keep Hamas's rule in Gaza. And can you zoom in on this? I just want Norman to see what they're wearing. They're wearing Stars of David patches.
Mm-hmm.
Him and everyone sitting behind him.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's amusing because amusing, frankly, it's disgusting, but we'll call it amusing. What's amusing about that is that one of the tenets of what's called the new anti-Semitism and one of the principles of what's called the IHRA definition of the Holocaust is IHRA, meaning International Holocaust Remembrance Association. One of the tenets of their definition and one of the tenets of the claims of a new anti-Semitism is you should never compare the sufferings of others with what Jews endured during World War II, because that's trivializing and effectively a sacrilege against what happened, a sacrilege of what happened to Jews during World War II. But here come along these Israeli officials and immediately act as if they are now under Nazi occupation and they are marked for extermination. Now, as I said, I'm perfectly willing to acknowledge, unless the facts eventually show otherwise, that an atrocity of a significant magnitude occurred on October 7th. But my dear friends, is that the Holocaust? We're always told don't compare the gas chambers, the systematic, methodical extermination of Jews. And now, suddenly, and probably not one of the most, but certainly a grotesque trivialization of what happened to Jews during World War II. Not to mention the most basic fact. The main argument about the Nazi Holocaust, about what made it such a horror, aside from the mechanics of the Nazi Holocaust, namely the systematic, methodical, assembly-like extermination of the Jews, was the complete innocence of the Jews who met that fate. And the sheer barbarism of those who meted out that fate. But are we really going to compare the people of Gaza and what they endured, really not since just the past 20 years, but 70% of them are refugees or descendants of refugees from 1948. So they've had to bear quite a few burdens over the past 75 years. And to claim that Israel is totally innocent, I'm not talking about the people who were killed, but Israel as a state, it's totally innocent, that the people who burst through the gates of Gaza had no legitimate grievances, because the whole claim about the Nazi Holocaust was Jews were wholly innocent. They were just rounded up for who they were, not what they did.
But
Was
Israel
Israel
wants to pretend that they also were punished for who they were, not what they did.
exactly? But is that a is that an accurate
No, of course not.
depiction of the motivations or the anger, the fury, the rage of those who burst through the gates?
Right.
People who were born into a concentration camp, people who had no future, had no past, had no present, people who lost a brother, a sister, a grandmother, a father during Israel's periodic mowings of the lawn. These were just these were just anti-Semites as a result of their DNA.
Yeah.
There was no legitimate grievances there. This pose by these folks in the UN of pristine innocence. They're innocent. You're going to compare your, meaning these Israeli officials who are conducting a genocide as we speak, you're going to say you were as innocent as my mother's father? You're as innocent as my mother's mother, as my mother's two sisters, as my mother's brother? You are as innocent. You're officials of a state that confined 2.2 million people in a veritable concentration camp. People who had no prospect whatsoever of a life and were filled, consumed by rage and fury at the fact that their lives from the day of birth, their lives had been destroyed. And you want to hear something? Ready for this? They were destroyed just because they were Palestinian. That's correct.
Right.
They may not have committed any act of good or any act of evil. They were born into a concentration camp. And now these executors of evil of a very high order walk into the UN as their government, of which they are members, are carrying out a mass extermination, and they pretend to pristine virginal innocence. It's such a disgusting, grotesque mockery of the Nazi Holocaust for them to place themselves in the same category as my parents' respective families. Now, that, I believe, is a real sacrilege.
It's infuriating to see people who, as you say, are perpetuating a genocide now try to hide behind the Holocaust, as if that should be the takeaway of the Holocaust, that we have license to do this.